the angry Black woman. Is it a real thing? Is this a persona that we've been forced into, or do we actually have some onus on us as Black women to determine how we're looked at when we're having, spirited discussions? Somebody's probably going to look at this and be like, oh, they're angry Black women.
You can't say nothing. Hey everyone, welcome back to the Mother Daughter Mixtape, where we talk everything love, life, and lessons learned along the way. My name is Jada.
And my name is Charmaine.
And welcome to our podcast.
In today's episode, we are talking about the angry Black woman. Is it a real thing, or did some force make that up about us?
I have nothing positive to say about that, so I'm going to keep my mouth shut.
I don't know if there is anything positive to say about that. But yeah, we're going to dive in and just talk about how it came to be, where was the phrase coined, and how did, we get this label of being angry when most of the time we're just being passionate or
vocal.
Yeah. And, we're looked at as angry and aggressive and, all these other terms that are meant to take away from just having an opinion, really.
And
right?
Put Black women down, essentially.
Right. So is this a persona that we've been forced into? Is it a real thing? Is it baseless, or do we actually have some onus on us as Black women to kind of determine how we're looked at when it comes to when we're having, spirited discussions, if you will. So grab a glass of wine, get comfy, and let's hit play on today's episode.
Boom.
I like the reverse roles here. Boom is like my thing.
Okay, so stick to your boom, and I'll tell people to grab whatever they need to grab.
Okay, it's okay. It's okay. All right, so first of all, let's just do our weekly check-in. How's it going for you this week?
Pretty good. It's been a productive week for me, good. For the podcast, for just life period. So you were at my place over the weekend. For the people that don't know, I had to reorganize my space, which just made my apartment so much more open. And it just made me feel like I was really at home since I've been decorating and stuff like that. So being in my space now that it's finally in the vision that I, envisioned it to be, it just feels really good, really cozy, really comfy. So I've been working really hard to keep it organized, to keep it clean and things like that. So it's just been doing a really good thing for my mental, thankfully. So
yeah, I could definitely see that. I thought the space looked great. I mean, it was fine, before, but I did like the changes that you made, and, like you said, it opened it up, and that mental, when you come home, I know you work from home, but even when you're out and you come home and you walk in and you just have this
breath of fresh air.
Yeah.
Almost, yeah.
So yeah, I can see how you could feel that. So I'm happy for you.
Yeah. So other than that, I mean, yeah, just been trying to stick to my goals and being mindful of, what I want to achieve. I feel like this time of year is, where, especially at this part of the month, it's you want to start prepping for the new year in 2025 and stuff like that. So I'm trying not to wait until January 1st to make changes in my life and things like that. Because I feel like when people want to do their New Year's resolutions and they're I'm starting January 1st and they wait until January 1st, they expect the overnight transition to just start working immediately. So I think it's important to start as soon as you can, and then as you go into the new year, you're already prepared to really kick things off.
Yeah, and I think at least thinking about it and even jotting things down or what have you, and I think I said this in a previous episode where I don't really make resolutions. Like I said, it's more of a period of reflection for me, things I want to carry into the new year, things I don't want to carry into the new year, goals and things like that. So I think, like you said, this time frame and period of time in the month and in this time of the year, you kind of want to start to think about those things that you want to change, improve, get rid of. So I think it's like a great time to do that.
Yeah, for sure. How are you doing?
It's been a very interesting week. I don't want to go into a whole lot of like what's going on, and maybe we'll talk about it in a future episode. But yeah, I am work-wise. Things are good. Things are quiet. This time of year, a lot of people are taking like PTO and things like that. And I love that for me because it allows me to actually get work done and I'm not in meetings all day. Outside of that, I'm just looking forward to kind of, like I said, a more quiet and peaceful time of the year. So I do have that time to reflect and just kind of decide how I want my 2025 to look. So it's been more of a period of reflection and, I'll just leave it at that.
Okay. That's good.
Yeah. So jumping into today's topic, the angry Black woman. Does she actually exist or is she made up? What are your initial thoughts?
For the people that don't know, I'm so like pro-Black that when I hear stuff like that, I'm just like, girl, forget anybody that has anything negative to say about, people that look like us. But it's also, when I think about that and what I just said, a lot of the times it's coming from internal, like it's coming from other Black people, Black men especially.
Okay.
So, as much as I want to be like, I'm, so pro-Black and like, I love us, a lot of the times it's us putting us down.
That's really, I was going to say, that's really unfortunate. And I can't say that I disagree with you. Some of the things that I had planned to talk about today and will still talk about was from a perspective of like being in the workplace, right, and from a corporate perspective, but even in just interpersonal relationships, it doesn't even have to be like romantic relationships, but interpersonal relationships where we get coined the angry Black woman because we're standing our ground. We're not just going to let you say and do anything to us. But we're labeled that because, for whatever reason, our race is looked at as culturally and historically, even all the way back to slavery, is kind of where that came from.
Right. That we have a lot of perseverance and like endurance and we can endure anything, and the strong Black woman, strong Black man. Girl, I'm tired of being tired. Like, yeah.
And why is it that it's the Black women? I mean, even not just women of color, Black women specifically.
Right.
So not like Hispanic women, Asian, you would think that a lot of the time the term or the group women of color tend to have some of the same, I don't want to call them issues, but battles and things like that. Why is it specifically the Black woman who's being labeled, whereas, like Hispanic women might be labeled as spirited or, spicy and, things like that?
Yeah. And something that comes to mind for me is that, and we don't have to get too much into politics. Take what I'm about to say with a grain of salt for the people that's listening and watching. But around election time, when we started to see the results and who voted for who, people of color is not an umbrella term when it comes to us, unfortunately.
That is
because other people of color don't ride for us the same way that we ride for us.
Or that we might even ride for them.
Right.
Like, that is so unfortunate, and it's disheartening because
we, especially as Black women, tend to take on other people's battles when it comes to stuff like that.
And I guess that's why we're seeing this whole movement of just watching, and we gonna let it crash and burn, and we're gonna watch it from a 70-inch TV, and it is what it is. Like, we're tired of bearing the brunt of everyone else's issues. We're tired of fixing everyone else's problems, and no one ever comes to our aid.
Right.
Yeah, that's really unfortunate.
So, yeah, I've gotten to be into a space where I just focus on me and mine and keep it pushing. Because, I mean, again, it's like you want to have community. And I feel like it's, I don't even know how to describe it, because it's like, of course, when it comes to us, we're always going to protect us. We're always going to, you know, do what we can for us as women and men. But at the same time, we still face our own issues within our own community where, like, Black men aren't protecting Black women.
Yeah.
And, you know, Black men are putting Black women down to uplift other races as it relates to dating and all types of other things. So I feel like we're in such a weird place for our community, where it's like we want to uplift, support each other, but then at the same time we're tearing each other down all in the same breath while we're trying to, like, say, oh, stand up for Black women, stand up for Black men, and things like that. So a very weird space right now.
Yeah, something that came to mind as you said that, more so from like a perspective of dating and the Black man specifically, and, you know, Black men who choose to date outside of their race. Like, a lot of the time, you know, at least I feel like maybe it's not so much these days, and I think it's more so because we have these podcasts and different people who are talking about it. But probably even less than 5 years ago, if you asked a Black man who dated outside of his race, you know, white woman, Latino, Hispanic, or Asian, whatever, a lot of the time it's, oh, they don't, they're not so sassy and they're not so this, that, and whatever. You know, they really give us characteristics that we had to.
Hey everyone, hope you guys are enjoying this episode. So in the next scene, you guys will notice a drop off in audio quality because our audio interface did die on us in the middle of this conversation. But I did still want to include a bit of content here from this part of the conversation, because I just think, you know, a lot of good points were made and we were having just such good conversation here that I wanted to still include it. So after this scene, you guys will notice that the audio quality will pick back up. Thank y'all for your patience. Hope you guys are enjoying this episode. Bye, guys.
To struggle and fight for ourselves to the point where now they think that we're just, you know, angry all the time and we're so aggressive, and it's like, we're not like that. We're fighting, literally fighting for our lives, and we wanted you to fight with us, right? So I don't know, I feel disheartened sometimes, and date who you date, marry who you marry, love is love. Like, I have no problem with like interracial relationships or anything like that. So I don't want it to come across as I'm bashing like Black men who date outside of their race. But don't put the Black woman down in the process.
Right. I was going to say the only time I have an issue with somebody dating outside of their race is if they decide to put another race down in order to uplift another race. Like, yeah. And like you said, it's like with Black men specifically, they tend to date outside of their race because they feel like, oh, the grass is greener on the other side. And like you said, it's like for a Black woman, she's characterized as angry, sassy, feisty, whatever. Not even feisty, because sometimes that can have a more positive connotation than negative if you, depending on the context. But then, like you said, if it's a Latina woman and she's doing, you could put the two same women in the same room together and they're doing the exact same thing, whether it's yelling, nagging, and things like that. And
they coined very different characteristics.
Right. And it'll be that, like you said, they're uplifting them to be like, oh, my girl keeps me in check, or like, oh, she's feisty and she's this and spicy, and I like, it keeps our relationship, you know, interesting, and, right? So it's like, it's not a race issue when it comes to relationship problems. Like, people deal with problems in a relationship in different ways, and there will be overlapping over races where like a white woman, a Black woman, an Indian woman, you know, can all experience the same emotions in the same scenarios. You know what I mean? So.
Yeah, and it's just, why are we labeled and coined as, you know, those words? I'm tired of saying the words over and over again at this point, but, you know, why is it that we get those labels and other races don't? And it all, I think, stems from not only society, but history. I mean, all the way back to the days of slavery. So, I feel like it didn't necessarily start with us, but somehow black men jumped on the bandwagon.
What do you mean by it didn't start with us?
Meaning like in the days of slavery, right? So you have a master who, you know, you pretty much got to do whatever they say you got to do. And a lot of women at that time, they were trying to protect their children, right? So, you know, being labeled as, of course, that phrase was not around back then, like the angry black woman, but, you know, there was something that was said way back then that has just kind of trickled through the generations to where I just don't think it started with black men saying that about us during that time.
Okay.
I could be wrong. Clearly I wasn't there. But I just find it hard to believe that that is where it started from, or that we or our men would have started that about us. I find that hard to believe. That's all.
I think a lot of it, though, stems just from, well, I won't say that because my mind was going to go towards like social media and stuff like that. But I mean,
I think the current phrase as it's coined today, the angry black woman, I think definitely social media has played a lot into that. I just think it was called something different back then. We were rowdy or unruly, you know? So it's just maybe the term has changed over the years, but the meaning has not.
Okay. I can see that.
Yeah. So just my 2 cents.
Yeah. This is just a conversation, guys. Like everything that
And we're just exploring the conversation.
Right.
Like,
exactly. Everything that you see online or anything regarding conversations, take with a grain of salt. Like we're just conversing and having, right. We just yapping. We just, like she said, exploring what that conversation looks like. So yeah.
Yeah. And sometimes, like, as you know, when we sit and have conversations, I'm developing my thoughts as I'm talking to you. Like sometimes we do research, and I'm actually going to go into some research that I did in a second, but a lot of the time it's like literally
off the top.
Yeah. I don't want it to seem rehearsed, you know?
Right.
So a lot of the time, especially if you see me pause, I'm probably like formulating a thought.
The wheels are turning.
Yeah. So that's all.
Yeah. So you said you did a little bit of research, and this is
did.
more related to black women in corporate and what those situations look like sometimes, unfortunately.
Yeah, for sure. So I came across another podcaster's page on Instagram. Her name is Janice J. Nice, and she talks a lot about diversity. So DEI, we all kind of know what that means, diversity.
Equity and inclusion.
I was going to the inclusion. I was about to miss the equity part. But yeah, diversity in the workplace, right? So one of the things that she mentioned is something that's called tone policing. So I'm going to read the definition, or as she coined it. Tone policing is defined as a conversational tactic that dismisses the ideas being communicated when they are perceived to be delivered in an angry, frustrated, sad, fearful, or otherwise emotionally charged manner. What do you think about that?
All I'm hearing is negative emotions there.
Yeah.
And I think that as people, as natural human beings, it's okay for us to express ourselves, whether perceived positive or negative.
Yeah.
And it's unhealthy, in my opinion, to have to restrain from expressing yourself in that manner. And in one of the episodes that we recently did, we talked about how women tend to take on those autoimmune diseases because they don't healthily express their anger.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I'll share one other thing that she said. She said black women who share their experiences of racial microaggressions and being labeled as the angry black woman are often met with advice that their message would have been better received if only they had said it in a nicer tone. Why is it that we have to police or basically adjust how we say, and I'm not saying you can just run up in there 10 toes down and be nasty about something, but why is it that we as Black women have to adjust ourselves to fit
to not hurt your feelings?
Are we being intimidating or are you intimidated? Two different things.
And honestly, it's like, if I'm going to tell you something about yourself or tell you something that I don't like, whether I say it in a nice tone or not, it's still going to be...
You're going to perceive it in...
a negative way, right?
Yeah.
So I just think in what you just read, I heard the word microaggression. It's like, if I'm dealing with microaggressions, how do you think, like, you think I like being dealt with microaggressions? Like, how do you think I'm going to go about anything?
Like, how are you going to perceive that?
Right.
You know, and how are you going to filter through whatever, I was about to cuss again, filter through the BS, basically. You know, why, I keep asking this question, why do we keep having to, you know, police ourselves? Go ahead.
I was just going to say, and a lot of the times when we're dealing with microaggressions, it's justified for us to have the emotions that we have in the first place. So
speaking of justified, that just made me think about this situation that I had in a corporate setting. I don't know, this was several years ago. So I was a consultant working at a company, and they put me in an office. All of my counterparts, like the FTEs that worked there, they had cubicles. The only other people that had offices in the building were managers. I was not in a managerial position at that time. But I was there as a consultant, or a SME, subject matter expert. And this older white gentleman came to my office, and I had been there maybe 2 weeks. Had never seen this man before, had never, couldn't have had a word with him. He came to my office and said, "Are you supposed to be here?" And I paused because I thought he was joking. Like, who are you to ask me if I'm supposed to be here? Like, are you supposed to be here? Like, so the angry Black woman in me probably would have come out that day. But one, I needed my job. But I was just so appalled that he felt the audacity to even approach me in that manner. And I literally froze, not because I was afraid or I felt subservient to him. I was just so taken aback. Like, who are you to be talking to me that way? And I had the thought to myself, if there had been another person in that office, a white male, white female, anybody but me, would he have felt the audacity to even say the same thing? And I don't think that that's the case. A few minutes later, he had to circle back and apologize once my manager got wind of it. And I could just, I wanted to smile and laugh so hard, because you can't just walk around talking to people that way. Now, if I had gone and done that to someone else in the office, do you think they would have kept me around?
I was going to say, you probably would have gotten fired.
They would have walked me out the building.
And the thing is that people get a lot more grace. Of other races get a lot more grace in those kind of situations.
Exactly.
And that's unfortunate for us, because, again, we can do the exact same thing, say things the exact same way, but
it's taken much more harshly. It's taken in a sense of, oh, you can't talk to me that way.
Because they feel superior to you.
Exactly.
And they feel like you're the inferior person, almost trying to overthrow them in some kind of way or something. So it is an intimidation factor, like you said, unfortunately.
Yeah, but again, am I being intimidating? Or are you intimidated?
And it's not my fault if you feel that way.
Right.
Especially if I'm not trying to make you feel intimidated. That sounds like a you problem more than anything. It's not my fault.
It usually is. I know this don't have anything to do with what we're talking about, but maybe we just need to have a totally separate conversation on intimidation. Intimidation and dating. I want to talk about that.
I would be down to talk about that, because I've always been perceived as intimidating.
Baby.
And I'm only 25. It's like, I'm just
I've
getting
heard
started.
it over, and I know we're not going to get into it right now, but I've heard it over and over again. Another conversation for another day, but let's put that on the books.
For sure.
Yeah. Okay, so one other thing that I just want to mention from Janice's post that I found interesting. She says, refrain from misconstruing a person's emotions as invalid. Regardless of whether you agree with someone or not, their feelings and their opinions are valid. Mm-hmm. And I think that sometimes people use that as a way to invalidate what we're saying or invalidate whatever stance we have because they have perceived it as an aggressive tone. And I don't know, I don't think that that is fair, to us as Black women, to invalidate not only what I'm saying, but to invalidate my feelings simply because you perceived it to be. And a lot of time that's what it is. It's just a perception. You perceived me to be the angry Black woman. You perceived me to be aggressive in my stance. We as Black women specifically, I don't want to even say our tone, but my voice is a little deeper probably than my average white counterpart. So just because of the way I naturally speak, it's going to be taken differently than someone who has a higher pitched voice or, so even things like that comes from, just culturally and how we're built, our DNA. So I don't know. I just think it's unfair that we're looked at in those ways when there are things that we can't change that about ourselves, I
think there's a question that's kind of up in the air when we talk about this subject that is like, are we forced to show up this way? Or is it just that we are naturally responding in our environments? Being that, like I said, we have to deal with microaggressions. And as Black women, especially in corporate, we have to work twice as hard to get half of what our white counterparts are getting and things like that. It's like even outside of the angry Black woman persona, if we show any kind of emotion, whether it's, sad or anxiousness or anything like that, you're almost perceived as weak. If you don't show up as strong, you're almost perceived as showing up weak or something like that is how I feel. So in, instances where we do deal with, some things that may have us emotional on a, like I said, feeling sad or something like that, we really have to bottle that up, take it on the chin and just keep moving, because if we don't, then we're almost deemed not to be capable of like what we're doing and things like that. So it's like,
yeah, no, I think that's a good point. It's almost like any emotion that we have, whether it's coined as aggressive, sad, we're not passionate enough, it's almost exacerbated by whatever it is that how people perceive us. And what I mean by that is that, and maybe exacerbated is not the right word, it's amplified is what I'm trying to say. So basically, if we're passionate about something, oh, we're over passionate, or if we're sad about something, oh, we're depressed, or so it's almost like we can't just be whatever the emotion is. We have to be 10 times what that thing is,
I was going to say, even because originally my mind was going to negative emotions, but even if you were to put on a happy whatever in the workplace and, show up all pippy and cheery and things like that, somebody would think that you're faking
What's
it.
wrong with her?
Yeah, you're faking it. You can't be too quiet in the workplace because then they'll think that you don't have anything to contribute and you're like way too quiet and you're standoffish or,
I've definitely been labeled as that.
Right.
I'm just quiet by nature.
Right.
It might not seem like it because I'm on a podcast, but
any kind of emotion, anything. It's like you can't be too much of anything because they're literally just going to have a problem with everything you do. Like we can't
it's
win.
amplified.
Right. Like you said, yeah. We can't win in any situation, it feels like. So
that's sad. And that's a terrible place to be in. Like, how do we navigate that as Black women? And how do we teach others or have the conversation with others about how to navigate that? Not only in a corporate setting, but just relationally speaking, like in community, in our interpersonal, our romantic relationships. How do we start that conversation or have the conversation about not labeling us and not putting us in this box that we don't belong in? I don't have an answer. And maybe, y'all help us out in the comments there. Like, how do we have that conversation, and how do you start it? How do you approach it? Who should we be having the conversations with, at least initially? Do we start with Black men? Do we, how do we start the conversation?
Yeah, but I don't know. I feel like even if we do, it's going to be a problem with that. Like, I just feel
anything that we do.
Right.
Regardless.
Yeah. I feel like we can't do anything right sometimes in the eyes of other people.
Right.
I don't know how to navigate something like that, because I feel like if we had the answers, we wouldn't be in this position. And it really isn't our fault. You know what I mean? Like, it's how we're being perceived. And at the end of the day, you can't change somebody's perspective in those kind of instances unless people want to change their perspectives. Like, if people don't want to understand us as individuals, as a race, as a group,
no matter what you do,
no matter what conversations you have, people are going to feel the way that they feel.
And they're set to believe a certain thing. Even you could show them something completely different,
right,
and they're still going to believe what they want to believe. I was about to say something political, but I don't want to go there. I'm gonna leave that alone. But yeah, I agree with you. But there's been, and I don't want to make this a statistical thing or anything like that, but there are studies out there that, talk about this thing. I mean, there's like the Harvard Business Review, there's the Business Insider. I've read some articles. So people are and have been talking about this for several years now. So, we're not the first, we're not going to be the last, but I just, think that it's an important conversation to keep, I don't want to say at the forefront, but to not let it fall so far to the wayside that we forget, and we're right back to ignoring that, we're not really the angry Black woman. Like, we can have emotions, we can have feelings, we can be spirited, we can be passionate about things without having to be labeled as this negative thing. So that's all.
Yeah, it's I don't know. It's one of those conversations where it's just like you talk through it and then it's like, now what?
Yeah, and it's almost even difficult to have this conversation because somebody's probably going to look at this and be like, oh, they're angry Black women.
You can't say nothing. You can't say or do nothing without people taking anything and just running with it.
Yeah.
So, I mean,
just having an opinion,
right,
is going to be an issue.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So, I mean, it is what it is. I mean, the people that, stick around and know us and, things like that, know that we're just having a conversation. We're exploring, different topics and, just kind of, it's just a conversation essentially.
Yeah. And this is off the cuff. Like,
right.
We don't, I've done some research because I wanted to have, a couple of talking points and things like that. But when we come to these conversations, I really try to come with an open mind and with the spirit of letting the conversation take whatever turn it's going to take as we're talking.
It's meant to be authentic. So, these kind of conversations are not for everybody, and we know that. But we just, like I said, want to be diverse in the conversations that we're having and, really just touch on a lot of the topics that, other people may not be so comfortable to have and things like that. And our audience typically are people that look like us. So, we want to have conversations that make sense to us, if that makes sense.
Right.
So
I think we had a really good conversation today about, and I'm going to do air quotes because it's not a real thing, the angry Black woman. Any final thoughts?
I'll just say that for the people that are listening, watching, of any race outside of being a Black woman, talking to the Black males as well, that just because we express any form of emotion, it's not, it ain't our fault that y'all are taking what we say and running with it, essentially. Like, I think that people don't understand that we really have to be so mindful of the way that we express ourselves that it gets to be exhausting.
Yeah.
Having to constantly think about the tone in which we speak so that other people don't get offended and don't take what we say the wrong way. It's exhausting. Could you imagine being in a corporate setting, going to the grocery store, just living your everyday life, and you have to be mindful of what you're saying and how you're saying it so that you don't hurt somebody's feelings or somebody doesn't take what you say the wrong way? Like, I just want to give some perspective for people that aren't Black women and just say that we're just being our natural, authentic selves a lot of the times.
We're no different.
We're no different, right?
We're human.
When you as men or women of other races express yourselves and, you know, you have your moments where you're emotional and you're this and you're that, you're allowed to be that. And as Black women, without question, as Black women, we deserve that as well. We deserve to have a safe space for us to express ourselves without judgment, without criticism. So I'll just leave my last point to be that, you know, it's important to create space for us, I'll say, and allow us to express ourselves, allow us to voice our opinions, be vocal, be passionate about the things that we're passionate about, because we let y'all do the same on Sundays when y'all watch football at 1 p.m. in that den. Okay, and your man den, what are the man cave? Okay, we let y'all do that without question. We let y'all yell at the TV. We let y'all do what y'all do. Okay, we know how it is. Leave us the same space to be as passionate and vocal about the things that we're passionate and vocal about.
Yeah.
So,
well said. What I'll leave with is just this quote that I found. It says, "We aren't just angry. We're passionate, human, and powerful. Let's dismantle the stereotype together." And that last piece to me, like, just says it all, because we can't do it by ourselves. It's going to take conversation. It's going to take understanding. It's going to take a different perspective for people to just understand we're just like you. We're not trying to be or have this thing where we have to be labeled as something, whatever that something is. In this instance, it's the angry Black woman, but Black women just tend to have all these different labels. And I just don't understand why our counterparts and others, they don't have labels like that.
yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Let's get into that a little bit. Like, when have you ever, I mean, the only label that comes off the top of my head is like a Karen.
I was literally about to say the same thing. As soon as you brought that up, I was like, Karen.
But
that's deserved. Okay.
I was gonna say that, but I was like, we over here saying that we don't deserve our label, and then the white women, they deserve their label. But it's true.
It's hilarious.
It's true. I mean, let me speak to your manager. I be wanting to speak to a manager too sometimes.
And we're the same in that way. Like,
right.
You know.
So call me a Black Karen sometimes, if you will. But outside of that, and maybe that's just a women's problem. Because, I mean, when it comes to men, they don't have those kind of labels when it comes to negative experiences.
I think, like, going back to that whole superiority thing.
Yes.
It's, men are allowed to do this because they're the ones who, you know, are... So, you know, they're the Neanderthals and they're the authoritative person in the world, you know. So why is that?
It's the patriarchy. That's what it is.
Yeah. Got to get into a whole nother conversation. Like,
yeah, I really was over here like, is it just us? But then I was like, yeah, actually, there are Karens
you see how long it took us to get to this point of realizing.
Maybe white women do understand just a little bit. No, y'all don't. But the point is that, I mean, outside of that, I mean, Asian women don't have that problem. Hispanic women don't have that label or problem or anything like that. So, Yeah.
And if you do, tell us. Like,
Right. Maybe we just don't know.
Yeah, we're not Hispanic, we're not Asian, so maybe there are labels out there that we're just not aware of. I would love to have a conversation, or, you know, in the comments or what have you. So if you're watching this and you're of another race or background, history, ethnic background, let us know in the comments. Like, what are we missing? What are we missing? Like, I really would love to have an open dialogue about that.
Yep. I agree.
So we'll wrap it up there. Hopefully you enjoyed today's episode and conversation. Like I said, please feel free to drop down in the comments. Leave us your stories. You know, have you ever been in a situation where you've been labeled as the angry Black woman? Even if you're not a Black woman, have you witnessed Black women being perceived as the angry Black woman? Did you stand up for her? Did you, you know, just kind of watch and understand and maybe have a mental note to yourself to say, okay, I'm never going to do that to, you know, another person? So I'm interested to have just an open dialogue about other people's experiences as it relates to this topic.
Yeah. Let us know in the comments, guys. Be sure to follow us on Instagram and TikTok at the MD, M as in Mother, D as in Daughter Mixtape. You can also find us on Apple Podcasts and Spotify Podcasts as well at the Mother Daughter Mixtape. And if you are listening, we are also on YouTube at the Mother Daughter Mixtape.
Awesome. So we look forward to your feedback and your comments, and we will catch you in the next episode.
Bye, guys.
Bye.